Where was I?
All right, so the 23 schizophrenics.
Yeah, the ward. So that, I've been divorced for 17 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This was not a few days. This was 17 years later. And I said, driving home, I said, oh, even I could use a drink. But I never drank. So I went into the Kingston Inn, Kingsley Inn, which is a very poshy place in Montreal.
Yeah.
And I went
Michigan.
in Michigan. No,
Birmingham.
in
Bloomfield Hills.
And and there was a couple there celebrating their anniversary, and I thought there was a couple here, just there, a woman and a man, and we were all talking and joking and helping them celebrate their anniversary, which was wonderful for me to get through the day. I said, oh, this is why people come to bars. You know, there was a lot of camaraderie. And I never did it again, so it was my one experience. And then when I stood up to go, the man that had been sitting next to the woman over there came over and said, would you like to go out to dinner? I said, oh, well, aren't you with her? He said, oh, no, I was just sitting next to her. And that was Bill. That was the man I married, so that's how I met him.
Can you tell us a little bit about Grandpa Bill? Because we never got to meet him.
Yeah. Well, he was from West Virginia, raised a Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the Navy during the World War II. And he was on, it wasn't a PT boat, but it was a PC boat, but that size boat. Boat, not a ship. So they zipped in and out. It was a war boat.
Mm-hmm.
And they shot guns, and they were in the naval battles with the Japanese. And that's how he lost a lot of hearing that way. They didn't wear ear things.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was in hot war. When he went back to Honolulu, when he was 19, he was just 19 years old, and he went back to Honolulu, and he got drunk, and he got tattoos on his arms. I hate to tell all the young people who are getting tattoos now, they bleed and they look terrible when you're old. And I don't think that's changed. So he was, he worked as a salesman, but an engineering salesman, engineering sales, for a company called Cooper Industries, which is a very big company. And they sell the receps and all this kind of stuff, you know, the switches and the plugs and a whole lot of that kind of stuff, all that stuff that's behind the walls. And, you know, I don't know what else, but he did sales for them. And he worked during the first couple of years of our marriage. He continued working, and then he was 65 or 66 or whatever it was, and he retired. He got Social Security. And when we got married at first, we didn't live together. We had separate houses because he still had 2 kids, and I didn't have any room for them. And I had a kid living in the house, so there was no room. So he lived in his house and I lived in my house. But then he sold his house, bought a little tiny house for his son, one son, and the other son came with him to live with me.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody else was living with me just then. Vicky went off to school. Yeah, or she went to work down in Alabama or whatever it was. I don't have that all straight. But anyway, Billy was living with us, and that was difficult because Billy was, what is it when you are born? They were adopted kids, both his sons. And his mother was an alcoholic.
Oh.
This one, and there's a name for it.
The
Kids are born with it.
fetal alcohol syndrome.
Syndrome. Something. He had that. So he was very difficult. And eventually we got him out of the house, and he went off on his own. And then we moved out of that house and moved into Clinton Township, which she said was as big as
South Bend, Indiana.
South Bend,
Very
Indiana,
close in size.
where Pete Buttigieg was mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Then we lived there for a while. Then I was working at a clinic. I worked at the clinic at one location, but then they said, there's an opening at our office in Clinton Township. Do you want to go there? So I went there.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people that had been there went out on their own and started their own practice. So I went there, and they gave me, I was the only psychologist, and people thought the only difference between a psychologist and a social worker was that I know how to do testing, and they didn't. It's more than that. So I started building up a practice and getting referrals from a couple of doctors, their patients. And after a while, I had a steady stream of those, and I opened my own office. I was very nervous and very scared to do it, but I did it. Because working in the clinic was very constricting. It was getting more and more constricting as the years went on. You had to do this way and that way, They were every legal thing. Not that I didn't follow the legal things, but well, anyway, I opened my own practice. And I had that until I retired for about 15, 17 years, about that. Then I closed the office, and the few clients I had I came to the house to see me. And I would do the billing and all of that out of there, that address. And then they gradually dropped off. I didn't take anybody new, but as they gradually finished and dropped off, I was living then on Eastwood in Oak Park, Michigan. I moved to a different house because it was much cheaper than Clinton Township.
You should talk about Bill.
What about Bill?
By that time, Bill had passed.
What?
You didn't talk about Bill passing.
Oh. Yeah, when we lived in Clinton Township, Bill had emphysema. I knew it when I married him, but of course it got worse and worse because he really could not stop smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And he smoked even though his lungs were solid black on the x-rays. Solid black. And he couldn't get any air. There was no air. So we went through the long period of months. He was in the hospital. Then he was intubated. They put the tube down your throat.
Yeah.
And he said, don't ever do that to me again. So we never did. We never would. And he died at home in April. And then after a couple of years after that, at first I got a dog. I got Fredo. And I lived there 3 more years. No, he was 65,
So you weren't.
No, I lived there quite a few years until I was 63, I think. And then I moved to Eastwood, which I already had fully paid for, because Eve was living there. And so we were renting it out. And I took it back. And I went to live there. And so that's where I saw clients. I closed the office in June 1990. And I saw clients at home.
So you weren't married for too long then?
10 years to Bill.
Okay.
22 years to Arnie, 10 years to Bill.
Okay.
I wasn't very good at being married. Either I got divorced or my husband died. So I decided that was enough. I wasn't lucky like my brother's been married to his wife for 75 years. And all they ever did was spend 2 nights apart and all that time.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that wasn't me. So, where was I? I'm moving to Eastwood in Oak Park on Eastwood in Oak Park.
Yeah.
And I lived there a while, and that's where I got my other dog. So I had 2 dogs, and they found my cat, Stony, in my shed as a kitten, a little tiny kitten. I had to feed it formula. They barked and barked and barked. They found, come and find him, come and get him. They found the cat.
What was the other dog's name?
This was Fredo and Stony.
And Ginger.
And Ginger.
Fredo and Ginger.
And
Okay.
Stony was the cat.
Okay.
Yeah, Fredo and Ginger. And then I got tired of living there. It got kind of scary because I was living alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted a place that was a little more secure. And
Was that the house that was like yellowish? I feel like I remember like a yellowish
no,
house, like on the inside.
I don't know.
no.
You're older than me, though, so I don't know.
I don't
What?
know.
I
Maybe
don't know
like
what
the
she's talking
lights
about.
in there were always yellow, like a yellowy
No, I didn't have
orange.
any yellow in my houses.
I feel like I remember like yellowish, orangish lights.
Anyway, so you moved.
Then I moved to Troy.
Mm-hmm.
There were extenuating circumstances. There were people who were in Oak Park who lived close to you, who moved away, and then you moved up close to where we lived in Troy. Because Vicky
Oh yeah, Vicky moved away. She got
married. She lived 6
No,
blocks
she
from
didn't.
you.
She didn't live there. when
She
I
lived
was
6
there.
blocks from you.
Did she?
Yeah, Vicky lived in a house
Hold on.
6 blocks away from you.
Yeah.
And when she got married and moved away, you eventually decided to come move close to us,
Troy. Yeah.
and a safer neighborhood, and
Yeah.
and closer to family.
Yeah. And I used to drive you to nursery school all the time. You remember that?
No.
Yeah. That I did. I came from Oak Park before I moved to Troy. I did that. Yeah.
Were you still taking clients by the time you moved to Troy?
No, I didn't have clients in Troy. No, I moved there with the dogs and the cat. Yeah, and I liked it there. It's a nice house. You know that house?
Yes, that house I
Yeah,
remember.
that house, you know. And I stayed there until when I came out here one time to visit Eve, her realtor said, your mother might, because I said, where would I move if I moved to California? And her realtor said, your mother would really love Leisure World. Everybody loves it. They moved there. So I came to see it. And they told me you can only have one pet. And being a good girl, I found to follow the rules. They told me one pet. I believed them.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed in Michigan and with that in the back of my mind. And it came up one December 23rd, just before Christmas, and I was driving down the road, and the snow was coming down very heavy, and I said, and Fredo and Ginger had both died, and I said, what am I doing here? Why don't I go live in California? So I did. Yes. So I came to live here. Came here 3 days and looked, I had 3 days to find a place.
Mhm.
Although everybody thinks you go to one salesperson and they'll show you the same places because it's all multi-list, all on the multi-list. I went to 3 different realtors. I saw different places. And I had a checklist. I made up a checklist of what I wanted. And this place got the highest score. So I bought it. Yeah. And I bought it because it was move-in ready.
Mhm.
I didn't want to see anything that wasn't move-in ready. I didn't want to have to fix it up or anything. And I moved here. And I've been here now for 10 years. And when I moved here, in the first year, I was trying out this club and that club, and I was active in things, and I was in the Producers Club, and Vicki had suggested that, why don't you guys do a dinner theater club? I said, oh, what a good idea. She said, you can find scripts online. So I proceeded to do that. And I brought it to the other woman who was the head of the class. And she thought it was a great idea too. We produced the first one, and I was in it. I played a detective or something. It was very corny, very bad. But they loved it.
Are there videos?
What?
Are there videos?
I don't think so. The audience loved it anyway. But I had a very hard time memorizing lines. Very hard. Like most people around here. Very few people can memorize lines that are willing to be in place.
No famous actors living here when we're
No
so close
famous
to
ones, but
Hollywood?
We have people who've been in commercials and things like that. You don't have to memorize a lot of lines, They take takes, sentence by sentence, or whatever they do. Yeah, they've been in commercials. One man was in The Godfather, and he had a speaking part. He's one of the gangsters.
Oh.
He still gets residuals. So anyway, I moved here for a year. I spent exploring the writing club and that and all this and that. And then my neighbor, who had a walker, came across, lived right across here, came across and knocked on my door. Talk about opportunity knocking. And I came to the door and she said, somebody gave me a call and asked me if I knew anybody who might be good to be on the board. Would you be interested? I said, oh, what does it involve? I knew nothing. What does it involve? And she told me. I said, give me 24 hours to think about it. And I thought about it, and I looked around, and I saw a whole lot of people who were either physically or mentally challenged, let me say. And I said, well, since I'm both physically and mentally not challenged, I should do my part. So I said, okay. And I got on the board, and I became CFO for a year and a half, 2 years. Then I got on the Golden Rain Foundation board for a year. Then I came back as CFO, and then I became president of this board for about 4 years. And I really liked it. It was a very good thing to do.
So what sort of changes did you make as president?
As president, well, structure-wise, I brought it from the 20th century into the 21st century, so that we had committees, we had regular meetings, and as president, I knew what was going on. And I changed a lot of policies so that, the garden policy gets changed every board that comes on, so we did that. But we did some other things too, which I can't remember. The biggest thing I did in policies was just before I got sick, I was sick, and you know, I was trying to finish it up, and I did. I finished it up. That it was brought to my attention by the salespeople, by the escrow people, that places weren't selling. We weren't getting customers because we were asking too much of them. They, you know, people, they said they're turning down people who have $1 million in their savings with on the theory that, well, they might give it away after they move in here. Why would they do that? What's so wonderful about moving in here? That you're going to give away $1 million to your kids? I don't think so. But they were turning them down because they didn't have a pension. I didn't know that then. This was very hard to ferret out and figure it out. Nobody else was able to actually do that. It took me a while. I had a committee. I told the President's Council about it. I gave them a report. And they said, well, why don't you head up a committee to find out about it? So I did. And I found out we have a policy. It was written in 1965. At that time, when people retired, most people had pensions. And that was what it was based on, that you would have this pension coming in for the rest of your life. And it wasn't based on somebody's portfolio, like a 401k. There was no such thing. And I realized we were doing things kind of loosey-goosey until we got this one person as head of the department. She said, no, I won't do that. You know, it has to go by the letter of the law. And the letter of the law was the black print. You know, it wasn't the white spaces. It was the black print. So we're going by the law. So now now I have an idea of what's going on. So one of the people on my committee was an escrow officer. And I said, you know, I wish we could see the policies from our sister communities. There were two of them. There's Walnut Creek and the other one.
Hold on 2 seconds.